Hey, second grade. So I'm sitting in my beanbag, something comfy. Why don't you guys go and sit somewhere comfy, like a beanbag or a couch, kind of relax, kick back, and I'm going to read you a story. Kind of like our reading time where I used to read your chapter books, like the mystery, the Cam Jansen one we read. For this one, I'm going to read you some chapters each day, and then by the end of the week, we will have read the entire book. So this week's book is Mercy Watson, Something Wonky, This Way Comes. It's kind of a funny book. The author is up here again. Her name is Kate DiCamillo. And then the illustrator, Chris Van Dusten. So here we go. Kick back, relax, and enjoy. Chapter 1. Mr. Watson, Mrs. Watson have a pig named Mercy. Mr. Watson, Mrs. Watson, and Mercy live together in a house at 54 Deckawoo Drive. One Saturday afternoon, Mr. Watson said to Mrs. Watson, "My darling, my dear, there's a movie at the Bijou called When Pigs Fly." So obviously there's Mr. and Mrs. Watson and Mercy. "When pigs fly," said Mrs. Watson. "What an inspiring title. Mercy, did you hear?" Mercy did not hear. Mercy did not hear because Mercy was not listening. "It says here that the Bijou proudly serves real butter," said Mr. Watson. "Oh my," said Mrs. Watson, "real butter?" Mercy perked her ears up. She was listening now. Mercy loved butter. She particularly loved butter on hot toast. But she would take butter any way she could get it. There's good old Mercy. Can you tell the page numbers actually have a piece of bread for the hot toast that she likes? "Yes," said Mr. Watson. "It says here that the Bijou proudly serves real butter on every bottomless bucket of popcorn." "Bottomless?" said Mrs. Watson. "Bottomless," said Mr. Watson, "which means all you can eat." "All you can eat?" said Mrs. Watson. "What a delightful concept." Mercy thought that all you could eat was a very delightful concept. "Let's go to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "Let's," said Mrs. Watson. "Oink," said Mercy. There she goes. Chapter 2. "Where are you going?" said baby Lincoln. "We're off to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "Oh," said baby. "What movie are you going to see?" "It's a movie called When Pigs Fly," said Mrs. Watson. So that's baby. She's not a baby, she's an older woman, but her name is Baby. "Is it a romance movie?" said Baby. "Is it a movie about love?" "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "I think it's basically a movie about pigs flying." "Don't be ridiculous," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Pigs don't fly. It's a figure of speech." "What's a figure of speech?" said Mr. Watson. "The movie title," said Eugenia, "is a figure of speech signifying the impossible." "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "we are going to be impossibly late if we don't get going. Would you care to join us?" said Mr. Watson. "Yes," said baby Lincoln. "Absolutely not," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Oh, sister," said baby, "please say yes." "No," said Eugenia. But she got into the Watsons' convertible anyway. "Where are you going?" shouted Stella. We're off to the movies, said Mr. Watson. What kind of movie are you going to see, said Frank. It's a romance, said Baby. It will be inspirational, said Mrs. Watson. It's a figure of speech, shouted Eugenia. So there again is Baby, Mercy, and this is the grouchy Eugenia. Then over here we have, who is this one? Oh, Stella, the little girl, and Frank is the little boy. Is it a movie with a happy ending? Said Frank. Oh, it must end happily, said Mrs. Watson. Can we come too? Said Stella. The more the merrier, said Mr. Watson. So there is the two kiddos running to get into the vehicle. That car is filling up fast. Chapter 3. Police Officer Tamilio had the night off. Officer Tamilio was at the Bijou Drive-In. He was with his wife, Mrs. Officer Tamilio. They were in the front row. And there are the two officers. That's what a drive-in movie looks like. You pull your car up and you listen to the sound out of the speaker, and they got a big screen. Have any of you been to a drive-in before? If you have, raise your hand and wave at me. Is it nice to have a night off from the relentless duties of keeping the world safe from crime? Officer Tamilio asked himself. It is nice, he answered himself. It is very nice. Mrs. Officer Tamilio smiled. Mrs. Officer Tamilio patted Officer Tamilio's arm. Animal Control Officer Francine Pollitt was at the Bijou Drive-In too. Animal Control Officer Francine Pollitt was with Alfred P. Tompkins. Alfred P. Tompkins and Francine Pollitt were on a date. And there they are on a date. You guys can't date till you're out of high school. That's from Ms.Fromm. You can't date till you're out of high school. Do you think that there will be actual pigs in this movie? Said Francine Pollitt. I'm not certain, said Alfred P. Tompkins. As an animal control officer, said Francine Pollitt, I have found pigs to be the wildest clients of all. Really? Said Alfred. Absolutely, said Francine. Although I did catch a pig once. At least, I think I caught a pig. Fascinating, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Simply fascinating. He put his arm around Francine Pollitt. And we are going to stop there for today. That takes us to chapter 4. So tomorrow, I'll find another comfy spot and I'll sit down and I will read you the next couple of chapters in the book. I will see you tomorrow, second grade.